A note before we start. This episode contains mention of suicide. From The Australian, here's What's on the Front. I'm Kristen Amiad. It's Friday, October 4. The identity of an activist who led a pro-Hezbollah march through Melbourne on the weekend has been revealed as Arashi Rabari. The Iranian national chanted pro-Hamas and pro-Houthi slogans as he waved a flag bearing Hezbollah insignia at the rally. Rabari has previously called Australia a tyrannical terrorist regime on social media. That exclusive story is live right now at theaustralian.com.au. She's the criminal barrister who double-crossed her gangland clients to help police convict them. Now, Nicola Gobbo is back in court. She's suing the state of Victoria for compensation after years in hiding. That's today's story.
My youngest child became incredibly angry. He understood that there were police around. He understood that they were Victorian police. He expressed at times that he wanted to kill them. He often expressed his fear that his mother would be taken from him.
These are the words spoken in Victoria's Supreme Court by former gangland barrister Nicola Gobbo. They're being read by a voice actor.
My oldest child said she didn't feel right in her head and expressed her desire to kill herself. Both of them had separation anxiety. Neither of them would go upstairs by themselves to the isolated farmhouse because they were scared. Neither of them could understand why there were cameras in the trees watching them. It was awful.
Speaking publicly for the first time in several years, Gobbo recalled a period of time in 2019 when she returned to Australia with her young children to attend to health concerns and answer questions arising from a royal inquiry into the handling of informants by Victoria Police at the height of Melbourne's infamous gangland war. Gobbo was one of those informants, known famously as Lawyer X, and her identity had been sensationally revealed earlier that year. She likened the constant police surveillance to prison.
I couldn't even step out on the front of the property without being told to get back inside. At times, they would be sitting in a car directly across the road from the house, watching the house.
Now, Nicola Gobbo is back in court, this time as the plaintiff. She's suing the state for compensation in the Victorian Supreme Court. She claims she suffered serious loss, injury and damage stemming from the 15 years she spent as an informant for law enforcement in the early 2000s and the extraordinary fallout that followed. Nicola Gobbo had represented some of Melbourne's most notorious underworld figures, Jason Moran, Tony Mockbell, Carl Williams, at the height of Melbourne's gangland war.
Victoria Police are under pressure after a series of shootings and a firebombing in Melbourne's north.
Bullets going everywhere and ending up even in playgrounds.
Local residents are afraid they're getting caught in the middle of a gangland war.
Melbourne is once again facing the spectre of gangland war, with a crime family patriarch shot.
36 people had been killed by the time the Victorian Police Force formed the Piranha Task Force in 2003 in a bid to restore peace. As part of those operations, it cultivated a network of informants that included Nicola Gobbo. She was given the pseudonym of Lawyer X, and she covertly passed information about her clients to police while she was representing them in court.
This is a breach of a key tenet of the justice system, which is that everyone's entitled to fair legal representation and that lawyer must work in the best interests of his or her client.
Damon Johnston is the Australian's Melbourne Bureau Chief. He spoke about the Lawyer X legal saga on a previous episode of The Front.
Clearly, Nicola Gobbo was working in the best interests of Victoria Police.
Police cut ties with Nicola Gobbo in 2006, but continued taking information from her in an unofficial capacity because, according to Gobbo's junior barrister Jessie Taylor, it was too good to resist. The whole time, Gobbo's true identity remained under wraps. Then, in 2014, when Damon was the newspaper's editor, the Herald Sun came knocking. The jig was up.
So they knew, Victoria Police knew that when we ran that story on March 30, 2014, they knew that their secret was getting out. And I reckon they thought they'd gotten away with it, but they hadn't.
After a long legal battle with Victoria Police, the Herald Sun did unmask the mysterious Lawyer X, and all hell broke loose.
It was their dirty secret. This is the biggest legal scandal in Australian history.
The revelation prompted a multi-million-dollar royal inquiry, with the so-called Office of the Special Investigator established on the inquiry's recommendation. It spent years poring over tomes of evidence, but Victoria's Director of Public Prosecutions has so far declined to prosecute anyone for their involvement with the informants. Nicola Gobbo entered the witness box via video link on Wednesday, her identity concealed once more. Her face was only visible to Justice Melinda Richards and a handful of barristers and lawyers present in the wood-panelled Supreme Court room where the trial is being held, in order to protect her location. Gobbo was placed into witness protection by Victoria Police after her identity was revealed, and her barrister, Tim Tobin SC, argued her life has been irrevocably changed by their alleged negligence. We've used a voice actor.
What is concerning to the plaintiff is the psychological effect that all this is having, not only on her, but on her children, and the effect that is having not only now, but the knowledge that it is likely to continue for the rest of their lives.
Tobin told the court Gobbo has been given a new identity and has lived in more than 20 different locations across multiple countries for her safety. He said she can't go back to work because potential new employers can't refer to her old identity to verify her experience. She can't transfer her 2 university degrees into her new name either. She can't access email addresses, bank accounts or phone numbers held under her former identity unless she contacts the service provider, and doing so would put her in breach of the Witness Protection Act. She was unable to sign leases for new tenants in properties she owned in Melbourne or sell property without a Supreme Court order. Gobbo can't access Medicare or superannuation, take out an insurance policy or apply for a credit card, and her credit rating is shot, she says, for the first time in her life due to unpaid bills and premiums. When her children were born, she retained their umbilical cords in case they were of use for future stem cell treatment due to a family history of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but she can no longer access them. Gobbo says her physical and mental health has suffered, and she says she's been unable to be fully open with psychologists for fear of revealing her true identity. Doing so would have seen her children removed from her custody.
As a consequence of what the plaintiff has been exposed to over the last nearly 5 years, she suffered some high-level depression and anxiety.
In her evidence in chief on Thursday, Gobbo said she feels like she's stuck in a kind of holding pattern.
I remain really frustrated about not being able to move forward and resolve all the personal things that I don't seem to be able to resolve without effectively making an application to a court and having some involvement of Victoria Police yet again. I'm really frustrated in terms of medical treatment that I can't simply say to doctors that I see, here's the number of my previous specialist so there can be continuity. I spend a lot of time ruminating over this, and I've spent hundreds of hours driving lawyers insane to try and come up with solutions or resolutions to no avail. I've been diagnosed with PTSD, but equally told it's very difficult to process trauma when the past is still in the present. I'm broken. I'm tired and I'm broken. And when I say broken, it's broken me to watch what's happened to the kids.
Gobbo's voice cracked as she relayed how there are few joyful moments left in her life.
I have tremendous obligation to keep going, to be emotionally as well as physically present and supportive for the sake of my kids. If it wasn't for them or for my partner, I don't know that I would see a point in living. I've just had enough.
Coming up, Lawyer X reflects on her time on the other side of the witness box. As a much younger lawyer, Nicola Gobbo said she found a niche filing bail applications for drug arrests in Melbourne in the early 2000s, many of which implicated members of the warring Moran and Mockbell gangs, but that neither side was happy about her representing the other. During her evidence-in-chief on Wednesday, she said she was under immense pressure to ensure members of the Mockbell clan were granted bail quickly. And she says she was directed to alter the bail conditions of crime bosses like Tony Mockbell and Carl Williams.
Mr. Mockbell and I had many aggressive, kind of terse conversations. The aggression and direction was coming from him. A lot of screaming phone calls, a lot of directions, specifically being directed to not appear for Mr. Moran on the basis I was not part of his crew. I was apparently part of the Mockbell crew.
Gobbo relayed an incident where she was threatened by Carl Williams' standover man, Benji Veneman, after representing his boss's rival in court.
I had a silk leading me in that bail application, but unfortunately he didn't come to court that morning, and that resulted in it being publicly known that I had appeared for Mr. Moran, and that resulted in Mr. Veneman threatening me outside of my home.
Gobbo alleged Veneman appeared in a screaming rage on the road outside her home a couple of days after that court appearance.
I don't remember seeing a weapon, but I do recall being frightened.
She said the appearance of her sister's vehicle inadvertently diffused the situation.
It was a Friday and my sister was picking me up to give me a lift to work. And I remember thinking at the time how lucky I was that my sister's car had come around the corner at the time, because Mr. Veneman was just so irate and abusive.
Gobbo's barrister, Tim Tobin SC, jumped in.
Did you have any knowledge of his reputation at that time?
I can't remember right now whether I knew at the time that he was a murderer of people or a violent individual, but he was certainly a frightening sight and he had a frightening demeanour.
How long after that event did Mr. Veneman die?
Recollection is that it was only a month or two later.
The state of Victoria is defending Nicola Gobbo's compensation claim and has sought to limit any liability to $1 million under the Police Informants Act. The trial continues on Friday. For all the latest, visit theaustralian.com.au. Thanks for joining us on The Front this week. Our team is Claire Harvey, Leah Zamaglu, Jasper Leake, Tiffany Dimmack, Josh Burton and me, Kristen Amiot.